Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Was Executed. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Death, they say, is the next stage of life. That it is a natural part of us and the entire universe. To some extent, I can see that. I truly believe it. If a person's death was caused by natural causes. Mine, however, was not. Konaha 16 years after the attack of Kyuubi. In Konaha, it was pouring heavily. It rained furiously. A furious storm. The heavens themselves struck the village with lightning and thunder to express their displeasure with the events below. A beaten, bloodied body with blonde hair, blue eyes, and whisker marks was forced to his knees within the village, in the execution square. Shimura Danzo stood in front of him, wearing the Hokage's robes and smirking at the sight of the Jinchuriki in such a position. Uzumaki Naruto, for your crimes against Konaha and for posing a threat to the entire village, I sentence you to death by burning with fire jutsus. Is there anything else you'd like to say before I kill you? Danzo responded, with Naruto scowling up at him. Yeah. I do, but I doubt you'd let me say them because you're a fucking coward at heart, Naruto replied before being struck in the face with Danzo's cane. You're going to respect me, brat. I will not tolerate such disrespect even before your death. Danzo's voice was slightly irritated. Respect? You demand respect while failing to give it where it is due. What a hypocrite. Of course, what would you expect from someone who refuses to get his hands dirty? From someone who, when the call is made, would sacrifice everyone around him except himself. You're a true patriot, remarked Naruto before being hit by Danzo with much greater force. Enough. Burn him before he says anything else that makes me angry, Danzo responded before instructing the Anbu to perform the hand signs. The crowd gathered behind and around them was tense. With delight. With delight. They were about to witness the demon brat's demise. It had been a long time coming for them, and not a moment too soon in their minds. They had wished for this day since the Sandaime and Gondame Hokages, and only now, with the Rokudame, did they get their wish. Do you think this will be the end of me, Danzo? So you'd better hope it does. You should beg Kami and the Shinigami to keep my spirit locked away. Because if they can't, I'll do everything in my power to return to Konaha and make sure this place burns down. Naruto stated as Danzo looked at him with that bandaged face. Unlike my Hokage predecessors, I believe that when you die, you stay dead, and spirits have no power over the world of the living, Danzo said, smirking at Naruto. Is this why you are constantly afraid of your own death? You should be afraid of your own shadow, despite the pain it caused, chuckled at Naruto. Kill him. Danzo said coldly as the 5 Anbu on stage unleashed the fire jutsu on the blonde. Hinata-chan, I apologize. I won't be able to be there for you as much as I would like. At the very least, I was able to get you out of Konaha and into a safe place with our baby before those fucking elders could apprehend you. To think I'd only live long enough to become a father. That doesn't mean I won't find a way to protect you, our child, and exact vengeance on Konaha for his treachery. I'll return one way or another. I promise, thought Naruto as the fire approached, not closing his eyes once before it made contact with him. As it got closer to him, Naruto reflected on how easily the people of Konaha turned on him at the command of the new Hokage. Not just ordinary people, either. Those Naruto knew, however, included Anko, Ibiki, Iruka, the clan heads, the Junin senseis, and the rookies without Hinata. Until today, he had been in a secret relationship with her. They had even secretly married only a few months after his return to Konaha from his 3-year training trip with the so-called Great Toad Sage Jiraiya. Great Toad Sage has a bleeding hole in his foot right now. He didn't learn anything from the pervert. All the man ever did was spy on women and give him minor tasks that any genin could do with the right instruction. Not that Naruto cared, because he had snuck away and found his own teachers while leaving a shadow clone to fool the old pervert. When they returned, Jiraiya boasted about being the ideal teacher for Naruto, which the blonde dismissed by claiming that peeping on women in hot springs and going to brothels was not training. It was amusing to watch the man's reputation deteriorate while the women around him beat the living shit out of him. Naruto's secret relationship with Hinata had made it difficult to sneak away to see each other, let alone get to their wedding destination. Jiraiya, being his usual snooping self, was always keeping an eye on Naruto, whether he was in Konaha or not. The blonde's privacy was invaded for the good of Konaha, which was nonsense no matter how you spin it. Fortunately for Naruto, the client for this planned wedding was an old dear friend of Naruto's, and the spring daimyo was more than happy to make it happen. Unfortunately, Jiraiya decided to snoop around after seeing the two were too close to be considered just friends, and blew the whistle on purpose. Again, it was all for the good of Konaha, according to the Sannin, but Naruto suspected he did it because he was a jerk when it came to his godson's happiness. He did push the blonde into a ravine just to force Kyuubi to use his chakra once. If that doesn't qualify you as a jerk, what does? Naturally, the Hyuga elders were not pleased, and moved to have the marriage annulled on the grounds that it violated their clan laws. Unfortunately for the elders, if the person performing the sacred ceremony was a daimyo and/or the marriage was backed by a daimyo, the marriage could not simply be annulled. Tsunade attempted to persuade Naruto to divorce Hinata on the grounds that they were too young, or that Iwa or Kumo will target her now, because of her connection to him. He was basically painting a big fat target on her back just by being close to him. Kurenai had stomped up to his house, gotten in his face, and threatened to castrate him if he didn't let her student leave their marriage. Naruto had once again told them all to fuck off. Hinata had gotten Kurenai to back down by warning her old sensei that if she threatened her husband again, the Hyuga would destroy the woman's reproductive ability. When vocal persuasion failed, Tsunade decided to put their marriage to the test by sending them both on separate missions. Both left the village in different directions around the world. Another aspect of the plan was that when one of them was in the village, the other was not, and they never had time for each other. To make them frustrated, angry, say hurtful things to one another, and then divorce. Or so the powers that be anticipated. In reality, Naruto would make certain that his route on any mission outside the village took him directly to Hinata when she was also out of the village. They spent as much time as they could together, and Konaha was never the wiser for it. They vowed that no matter what Konaha threw at them, they would have a life together. Hinata then became pregnant. Something she couldn't keep hidden for long in Konaha. Not with the Hyuga peering into her belly every chance they got to see if life had been conceived in it. The first attempt on Hinata's life began about 2 weeks after the Hyuga clan found out about the pregnancy. They arrived at the couple's home and attempted to use their gentle fist to kill the child within Hinata. They wanted to eliminate any possibility of the woman ever becoming a mother again. Fortunately, Naruto was returning from a mission early at the time, and he witnessed what the bastards were up to. Naturally, it enraged him, and he proceeded to butcher the Hyuga clan members who were attempting to end Hinata's life. It didn't help that some Anbu were watching the whole thing and didn't intervene until Naruto arrived. Of course, by the time the Anbu decided to act, the Hyuga clan members were already dead, ripped to shreds, and Naruto himself was standing protectively in front of his wife. Naturally, the people of Konaha were displeased. The Hyuga clan, to be specific. They demanded his death. He claimed he had no right to kill clan members. Naruto retorted that they had attempted to murder his wife, if not their unborn child, and were on Uzumaki clan property illegally. Tsunade had no choice but to side with Naruto on this matter after much deliberation, and could only warn him not to do anything like this again. Do you believe it? The woman pretended as if he was in the wrong. Not surprisingly, Naruto discovered that Tsunade did not approve of the boy's relationship with Hinata because she believed the girl would soften him. That he would shirk his duties to Konaha by falling in love, and that such things had no place in the life of a Hokage if he wanted the hat someday. As if she was a talker. Jiraiya and her were constantly attempting to separate the two through missions. They'd even hire men, for Hinata, and women, for Naruto, to seduce them into being unfaithful to each other. Kurenai had even tried to get Naruto to cheat on Hinata with her, if only to use it as leverage to get the two of them to break up in the future. Naruto's reaction to Kurenai's attempt was to get the hell out of his house, or he would do something very painful to her female organs that no man would touch. Naruto couldn't understand why Tsunade or Jiraiya would go to such lengths to ruin his relationship with his wife at first. Were they not entitled to happiness? Were they not entitled to be in love? Do you have a family? Tsunade and Jiraiya's opinion? According to what Naruto learned during a secret meeting between the two when discussing, apparently not if you were the village Jinchuriki. Mito only found happiness in life as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki because she was the Shodem's wife, and no one knew she was even the Kyuubi Jinchuriki from the start. Not to mention, the Uzumaki clan was rooting for her from the shadows, so if things got out of hand, she could return home and leave Konaha behind. Kushina had Mito's support in Konaha just before the elderly Uzumaki woman died and the Uzumaki clan fell during the Second Shinobi War. But when those rising through the ranks of Konaha learned of her secret, even Kushina felt some of the oppressive force of Konaha. Of course, by that point, the Yondaime Hokage had taken his seat, and no one dared to challenge his decision to keep Kushina's status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki a secret from the village. But what happened when he and his wife died? Everything shifted. The Sandaime Hokage believed that the adult population should be informed of the truth. So why not? Were they not astute? Wrong. Jiraiya, of course, refused to have anything to do with Naruto as he grew older. Why? It would be inconvenient for his bachelor and perverted lifestyle. He wanted to spy on women for research purposes. He desired to visit brothels and be laid by attractive women. You can't do that while changing a baby's diapers or raising the baby around the clock, let alone training the baby when it grows up. His plan was to let the village handle Naruto while he grew up. When the boy was old enough, Jiraiya would appear, use his ninja fame to get the Uzumaki's attention, and soon have the runt eating out of his palm. Tsunade's reason? She was simply depressed. Dan, her lover, died. Nawaki, her younger brother. Minato. Kushina. The woman couldn't bear the thought of someone else being truly happy. Or, more accurately, happier than herself. The fact that Naruto was the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and that an autopsy performed by Tsunade proved that Kushina was killed by the Kyuubi didn't help the Sanin's opinion of the boy. It wasn't just him either. Shizune was a victim in and of herself. Like a puppy on a leash, he was always by Tsunade's side. Always on hand to deal with debt collectors, and later as the Senju's assistant when he became Hokage. Always dealing with paperwork and an endless stream of bureaucracy. Shizune was an attractive woman who could have had a boyfriend if she wanted to. As long as Tsunade didn't interfere while claiming it was for the younger woman's own good. To make matters worse, Pain from the Akatsuki arrived with Konan and attacked Konaha. Of course, they were defeated. Naruto's hands killed Pain. Konan retreated back to Aim, where the Akatsuki was hidden. Despite the destruction caused at the end of the fighting, Naruto kept Konaha safe. You'd think that after Naruto saved Konaha from total destruction, people would change their minds about him, right? Wrong. They were still being jerks and giving him and Hinata a hard time because the Akatsuki were attacking Konaha for him. Tsunade was unconscious. A brief coma, but one nonetheless. Jiraiya was still alive, but he only had one arm and needed a prosthetic. He had intended to travel to AIM to investigate the Akatsuki leader based on a hunch about who it was. However, Naruto's actions since returning to the village, as well as Hinata's in terms of being the blonde's wife while carrying his child, had repeatedly delayed him. Danzo took over as the new temporary Rokudame Hokage after speaking with the Fire Daimyo about Tsunade's replacement until she awoke. Of course, Naruto had seen the writing on the wall by that point. Hinata felt the same way. If they stayed any longer, their lives and the unborn child she carried would suffer irreparably. It didn't help that the Elder Toad summoned Jiraiya and foretold of a dark prophecy that the Toad Sage assumed was about Naruto. With this in mind, Danzo used this ammunition to order the arrest of Kyuubi Jinchuriki and his wife in order to use the baby to seal Kyuubi into him or her. Naruto had no intention of having his child used in this manner. It was bad enough that it had happened to him, but to do such a thing to his child and, no doubt, deny Hinata her right to raise him or her was not something he was willing to put up with. As a result, they fled. Hinata had to flee because she wasn't truly bound like he was because the stupid Toad contract allowed Jiraiya to reverse summon him at any time. If Naruto followed her now, he'd be yanked back to Konaha and taken away from her before he could say, instant ramen. As a result, he raised an army of thousands of shadow clones and flew his wife out of Konaha while dealing with Danzo in his position of power. The old war hawk was not happy with him. Not in the least. He was well aware that Naruto would not willingly fight for Konaha. The boy would not be influenced by his Sharingan, which was hidden behind his bandages. The Uzumaki clan was a tenacious bunch. It was always that way. Naruto refused to tell Danzo where Hinata had gone, instead ordering the T&I department to extract the information from him. Nothing should be held back. They did not. They ripped into his skin. Despite the fact that she was supposed to be like him, Anko seemed to enjoy it quite a bit. The more he resisted her methods of communicating through physical pain, the more the woman turned on. Anko continued to cut into his flesh, stabbing, slicing, breaking bones, and so on. She even let Kurenai have a go at him, unleashing everything painful he went through growing up all the way up to Anko's time ripping apart his flesh. Two Yamanaka tried their luck with him. Fu was one, and Inoichi was the other. Ino's father. Neither of them seemed concerned about him. The former was unsurprising, but the latter was unexpected. Nonetheless, their double invasion of his mind had no effect on him other than to irritate him greatly. Both were admitted to the hospital after Naruto mentally beat the crap out of them, with the attacks mentally projecting onto their physical bodies. It wasn't long before Ibiki stepped forward to take a shot at him. Many people believed that because he was the head of the T&I department, he was the only one who could break the Jinchuriki. But Naruto had plenty of reasons to resist, and when Ibiki was finished with him, all he did was laugh at the scarred man's attempts before asking if this was his best shot. Danzo, enraged and frustrated by Naruto's resistance, decided to cut his losses and simply execute the blonde brat in public to strengthen his public support. He knew it was risky because it meant losing the village weapon. But the fact remained that his Jinchuriki was broken, and a broken weapon had no place in the world if it couldn't be repaired. He also knew that if the brat died, the Kyuubi would perish as a result of what the Yondaime Hokage had done. There is no reform. There will be no return. That concludes the story. And Naruto wasn't the only one with a Biju. Sure, the boy had the strongest Biju, but he wasn't the only one. All Danzo had to do was capture one of the other Jinchuriki and recondition him or her to be a loyal weapon and tool of Konaha. If not, they could extract Biju and reseal it in someone else to begin again. And there was always the possibility that his root or Jiraiya's spy network would track Hinata or her child down in the future. It was only a matter of time before they did so and turned the girl or boy into a potential Jinchuriki in the future. As Danzo gazed into the fire that was consuming Uzumaki Naruto, he expected the brat to scream in agony. To scream in agony while the audience applauded. To see the boy suffer with regret for not bowing to his superiors from the beginning. Instead, Danzo received only laughter. Laughter from the dying boy, who was staring at him through the flames with glowing red eyes. Danzo actually felt a sliver of fear after seeing such an eerie sight. He wasn't alone in this. The crowd's cheering had died down in the midst of the raging storm above them, as the sound of laughter from the one they were cheering for had died. It was actually ruining the mood of the crowd and making the shinobi around them extremely uneasy. You believe I'm gone for good. You believe I'm gone for good. Death, however, has no power over an Uzumaki. I'll be back. I will return. Konaha and all who live there will be UUUUURRRRN when the time comes. Naruto exclaimed in a demonic voice before laughing as the storm above intensified and the wind seemed to swoop in and hit the boy hard enough to scatter his ash-like body to the winds. The laughter echoed throughout Konaha, and the storm didn't stop. In fact, the storm became increasingly worse. However, that was a long time ago. At least, not for me. My death, I discovered, led my spirit to a path of light beyond anything I had ever known. Perhaps I was reincarnated. Nobody knows. The point is that Uzumaki Naruto was no longer alive. I was rebuilt. Reshaped into a being of light in the face of darkness. And for a while, I did a good job. Until I met him, that is. Until I met Morgoth, the Dark Lord. Perhaps it was his distinct presence that overpowered mine. Perhaps it was his words and actions that reminded me of a past I once had. Perhaps it was just my own desires and promises of vengeance against my old world. Who knows, once again. What I did know was that I could no longer serve anyone other than this man, this god among all other entities, and pledge my allegiance to him. And eventually I made a name for myself. In fact, there are numerous names. Myron. Anatar. Artano. Gorthor the Cruel. The Enemy. The Dark Power. The Great Eye. The Necromancer. The Lord of the Ring. The Sorcerer. The Black Hand. The Nameless Enemy. Tauren. The Sauron the Great. Sauron the Deceiver. Oh yes. I went by many names. And the titles. I had so many of them. Abhorred. Necromancer. Dark Lord. Lord of Mordor. Lord of Gifts. Lord of Barad Dar. Lord of the Earth. Lord of the Rings. When Morgoth was defeated, I assumed the title of Dark Lord. In his name, I waged war. I brought men, elves, and dwarf kingdoms to their knees. Many people assumed my abilities were all magical in nature. For the most part, they were correct. The majority of it was. But not completely. The Ring of Power was said to have inscriptions in an elvish language on it. Ha! Only the fools knew how wrong they were. In terms of what they were seeing, they were only half right. Yes, it was a form of writing, but any idiot with enough time and patience studying Elven language can put something like that on a magical ring. In reality, The inscription written in Elven language was designed by me to conceal the fuinjutsu mixed into it and prevent it from being destroyed. When I finished forging this ring of power, I poured all of my pain, suffering, and cruelty into it, imprinting my very soul. I made certain that this one ring would be the supreme ring over all other rings associated with magic. That I would hold the one ring that would rule all other rings made for the elves, dwarves, and men of Middle-earth. I'd seen enough of Middle-earth to understand the darkness in men's hearts. I'd seen it before as Uzumaki Naruto, and I'd seen it again here. I believed that if I could control their spirits and the wills of these people, I could become Morgoth and claim Middle-earth for myself. Before I set my sights on my own world in order to crush my enemies, who had most likely forgotten about me. Unfortunately, my enemies in Middle-earth had other plans. A final alliance of men and elves marched against Mordor's armies, fighting for Middle Freedom Earths on the very slopes of Mount Doom. Victory was close, but the ring's power was unbreakable. At this point, when all hope had faded, Isildur, the king's son, took up his father's sword. And Sauron, the foe of Middle Free Earth's peoples, was defeated. The ring was passed down to Isildur, who had one chance to destroy evil forever, but men's hearts are easily corrupted. And the Ring of Power has its own will. It betrayed Isildur, ultimately killing him. And some things that should not have gone unnoticed were lost. History became myth. Myth evolved from legend. And the ring remained unknown for over 2,500 years. Until chance intervened and the ring ensnared a new bearer. The ring was given to the creature Gollum, who took it deep into the Misty Mountains tunnels, where it consumed him. The ring granted Gollum an unnaturally long life. It poisoned his mind for 500 years, and it waited in the gloom of Gollum's cave. Darkness crept back into the world's forests. There was talk of a shadow in the east, a nameless fear, and the Ring of Power. It was finally time. It deserted Gollum. But then something unexpected happened, which the ring did not intend. It was picked up by the most unlikely of creatures. Bilbo Baggins as a Shire Hobbit. For the time will soon come when hobbits will shape everyone's fortunes. Ah yes. The film The Hobbit. When he discovered the Ring of Power, he was a curious little thing. To think that my precious might go to him for a while. And right in front of wizards, elves, dwarves, and men. No one suspected the Ring of Power. My Ring of Power was always in their grasp. Ha! What gullible fools! Who is your adversary? Gandalf, the enemy, has been defeated. Sauron has been defeated. He will never be able to regain his full strength. But Saruman the White was mistaken. Since my defeat, I had been gaining strength. My previous knowledge of absorbing nature chakra assisted in keeping my now formless state while I resided in Dol Guldur. Powerful spells prevented any living entity from accessing the ancient texts and knowledge there. Done by the forces of light of the ancient White Council to ensure that no Dark Lord, including Morgoth, or even myself, could rise again through such sorcery. They should have given it their all. They talk about a necromancer who lives in Dol Guldur, a sorcerer who can summon the dead. They failed to consider the dark spirits of the dead. Specifically, mine. I broke through those spells and spent the next 400 years immersed in ancient magical knowledge. I'm gradually regaining my strength. I'm biding my time slowly. Secretly gathering agents to carry out my orders. Men. Orcs. Even the dwarfs were my servants, though they had no idea who I was. They had no idea I had sent Smaug to Erebor. That one night, my shadowy spirit appeared before the sleeping dragon, whispering to the creature about the vast treasure hidden beneath the mountain. The enormous size of the gold, jewels, and diamonds mined by the dwarfs all living there. I whispered into Smaug's ear about bathing in gold. I even whispered to him about how he could be the king beneath the mountain because he possessed the Arkenstone. The Royal Jewel. A powerhouse of a jewel. One I wished to possess, if only to channel its energies into the Ring of Power, making me a better person. The longer the two of them were nearby, the more powerful I became. As a result, the dwarves' desire to reclaim the Lonely Mountain figured into my plans. I manipulated events once more to make the dwarves who once lived in Erebor or desired to live there seek each other out. To put them in a position where removing the dragon from the mountain was a matter of life and death. My army of orcs attacked Moria in order to reduce the number of dwarves. To reduce the number of descendants of the Dwarf King to a trickle. To cause them anguish and pain. I knew more about their minds than they did about themselves. The dwarves, like men, could be corrupted by greed and a desire for all things gold deep beneath the world as we knew it. So I spoke to them in hushed tones. As a shadow, I spoke into the hearts and minds of my adversaries. A nightmare within a nightmare. Whispers of what might have been or might not have been if the dragon within the Lonely Mountain had been allowed to live there. Naturally, my words struck a nerve with Thorin. The fact that he is the grandson of the king beneath the mountain casts a large shadow over him. My influence on him was insignificant. The dwarf himself desired to reclaim the mountain, but lacked the necessary motivation. I mentioned the prophecy that had been foretold and how Thorin could make it come true. So straightforward. So simple. Finally, the fool embarked on a quest. A quest that satisfied my desires while also making my enemies suspect my nearly invisible hand was at work. Saruman of the White Council, the foolish white wizard, was blinded by his own arrogance in believing I could not recover my full strength. Gandalf was not convinced. He wasn't as deafeningly deafened he could see the signs of my return. Is it true that we are at peace? Trolls have descended from the mountains, raiding villages and destroying farms. On the road, orcs attacked us. It was unfortunate that no one listened to him until it was almost too late. When he forced my hand, I was slightly impressed. Unfortunately for him, I was not without my power, and I demonstrated what it meant to cross me. There is no light that can defeat darkness, wizard. I showed him what I looked like in the dark. The blaze that swept through my spiritual body. My soul is filled with rage. The fury grows stronger with each passing second, ready to erupt and consume everything in its path. I made him say my name out of fear and even respect. Sauron. Unfortunately, I underestimated the Grey Wizard, believing he would not have sent for help before confronting me. The rest of the White Council arrived, and they, like the Grey Wizard, challenged my and my servants' power. Under the sky, 3 rings for the Elven Kings. 7 for the Dwarf Lords in their stone halls. 9 for mortal men destined to perish. I nearly knocked them to the ground. The shadow cannot be defeated. You're fading even now. In the darkness, there is only one light. I demonstrated my strength and made them tremble. It has started. The East will be destroyed. As a result, the kingdom of Angmar will rise. The Elves' era has come to an end. The Orc Age has arrived. Galadriel, the High Elf, may have taken my words and actions personally. You have no authority here, Mordor's servant. You have no name, no face, and no form. Return to the void from which you came. They had achieved victory, banishing me from the fortress and returning me to Mordor. A minor irritant. My power did not diminish as a result of the High Elf's challenge to mine, and she knew it deep down. The White Council, at full strength, could have defeated me, but they were ultimately trusting fools. One of them is fighting me by himself. He must be hunted down and destroyed once and for all, my lord Saruman. Sauron will never be able to reclaim control of Middle-earth without the Ring of Power. Go now. I'll handle Sauron. He had been challenging me for 60 years. Our two minds fought for 60 years, and in the end, mine won. I had the ability to kill the White Wizard. Cast him aside. He'd lost his mind. He looked more like a drooling old fool than a powerful wizard in the arts of magic. But why would I do such a thing? When his own power could help me in my battle against the kingdoms of elves, dwarves, and men. Sauron has recovered much of his former power. He can't take physical form yet, but his spirit hasn't lost any of its power. The Lord of Mordor, hidden within his fortress, sees everything. His gaze cuts through cloud, shadow, earth, and flesh. Gandalf, you know of what I speak, a great eye, lidless and wreathed in flame. The Sauron's eye. He is attracting all evil to himself. He will soon summon an army large enough to launch an attack on Middle-earth. Saruman would be crucial to that army. You didn't seriously believe a hobbit could stand up to Sauron's will? There are no such people. There can be no victory over Mordor's might. Gandalf, we must band together with him. We must band together with Sauron. That would be prudent, my friend. Tell me, friend, when did Saruman the Wise abandon logic in favor of insanity? And so Saruman's intentions to aid me in my war against the kingdoms of Middle-earth began. Sauron, Lord of the Earth, the power of Isengard is at your command. And it was here that I issued a simple command to Saruman. Make an army for me. Mordor, you are deserving. Saruman was successful in this. The so-called White Wizard had his mind opened to the powers of darkness and created a new breed of orc with my help. Do you know how the orcs first appeared? They were once elves who were kidnapped, tortured, and mutilated by dark forces. A ruined and horrifying way of life. Now mastered. Uruk-hai, my adversary. Saruman had helped me bring the war to men on two fronts. He marched his army to slaughter Rohan, while I moved mine from Mordor to the gates of Gondor. I almost won and would have won if I hadn't underestimated men's strength when given the right push by the right people. Specifically, the one who would ascend to the throne of Gondor and become its king. But it was hobbits' strength and friendship that I underestimated the most. It was because of them that I failed. My power was forever lost because of them. Or so I thought. As it turns out, after all this time, loyalty to Morgoth still has some value. Welcome, my old servant, Morgoth said powerfully. Master, Sauron murmured in a shadowy blob-like mass that couldn't take shape. You have failed to conquer Middle-earth, Morgoth observed from his position in chains, stained in dark blood that made even the darkness around them seem bright. Please forgive me, Master. I attempted, Sauron humbly replied before his master. That's exactly what you did. I've been watching you from the depths. You tried several times. In many cases, you came close. However, you underestimated the power of light. The elves' light. Dwarves' inner light. You even underestimated the light that exists within men, Morgoth remarked as Sauron's army bowed in shame wherever it could. This will not deter me. I will rise once more. Somehow. In some way. I'll get up. Morgoth let out a chuckle as Sauron stated. Maybe you will. But not in this case. Nowhere in Middle-earth, Morgoth replied, his one hand bound in chains glowed with power. Master? Inquired Sauron, surprised. Do you think I'm a fool or a blind man, my servant? I know what your heart desires. I understand what your spirit desires, Morgoth replied before images in the darkness revealed Soren's past life. A day in the life of Naruto Uzumaki. You knew? Sauron asked, and Morgoth nodded. I was aware of your past. I could feel your anguish. I saw your threat to exact vengeance on those who had betrayed you. Sauron, I opened your mind to those things. In exchange, you joined me in believing that my vast knowledge and power in the magical arts would provide you with a way to return to the world that believes you are dead. You knew that serving the light would never provide you with what you seek, my devoted servant. As a result, I am more than willing to grant your request. As a reward for your many years of devoted service to me long after my alleged death, Morgoth responded, with Sauron feeling a sense of elation at the news. I am not worthy of such a generous offer, my lord, Sauron replied, as Morgoth used more of his power to rip open the portal to the elemental countries. Now, follow my servant. I discharge you from my service. Your will is now entirely your own. Your goals are now your own. Go forth with the knowledge and wisdom you have gained over the ages. Take charge of your destiny. Morgoth obeyed, and Soren's form entered the portal before closing it. Morgoth smirked behind his helmeted form now that Sauron was gone. His actions in assisting his loyal lieutenant were not generous. Not at all. Morgoth was well aware that his loyal lieutenant possessed considerable power in his own right. In fact, Sauron deserved the title Dark Lord and was demonstrated to be a master of working through the shadows. Ironic, given that he was once a servant of light before Morgoth used his magic to secretly open Soren's mind to the past. He'd been such a talented young man as Uzumaki Naruto. For someone so young, he is truly a magnificent being to behold. Only to be duped. His village's idiots. Killing him all because he refused to follow their ridiculous rules. How could anyone have troops who were emotionless? There is no emotion. There is no comprehension. Drones were useful at times, but an army of them with another drone for a commander who couldn't think for himself and had to wait for the main leader to give the final order was simply stupid. That world was in shambles. Nothing to keep it stable. Sauron, or Uzumaki Naruto, could bring about such stability and rule over it as the Dark Lord Morgoth knew he could be if given the chance. Morgoth would rule over Middle-earth one day. His former servant would rule over the elemental countries one day. Morgoth was also assured that his former servant would never again attempt to betray him if given the opportunity. Realm of the elemental countries 5 years after Naruto's death. The shadowy mass of Sauron, Naruto slammed into the ground. Even though his form was just a mass of shapeless darkness, it didn't bother the former Kyuubi Jinchuriki in the least. He was weak at the time. He didn't have a body to call his own. There was no power to command other than what nature provided to sustain himself. There is no ring of power. His prized possession was destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom in Mordor. But he wouldn't worry about it right now. First and foremost, he needed to know if his wife was safe. Was his child safe? Naruto, or was it still Sauron? Used his chakra sensory mastery and could sense how connected he was to this world at the time. Those were the two most important things right now. Looking around, the formless entity that was Sauron, Naruto sensed this place was familiar to him. He could sense the power of this place and the souls present. Each of them is in excruciating pain. Naruto felt out with his limited power, calling on his knowledge of all things related to the spirits of the dead, and in an instant felt the connection here was due to the souls lingering were of the Uzumaki clan. This meant he was on the island of Uzu. He was living in the ancestral home of the Uzumaki clan. His mother's birthplace. An ancient location containing ancient knowledge. Uzumaki Naruto, the former Dark Lord of Middle-earth, learned everything he knew about his clan by raiding the outdated history textbooks that the Academy tried to get rid of. How the Uzumaki clan became Fuinjutsu masters. Many feared them because they were the only ones who could hold the Kyuubi in their bodies due to the massive amount of chakra in their bodies. He also discovered that the Uzumaki clan was said to be the Senju's cousin clan. In a sense, Naruto and Tsunade were cousins. Sort of distant cousins. It didn't help his opinion of her that her grandmother was Uzumaki Mito. If anything, it fueled Naruto's rage at the woman for betraying him and denouncing him all along. She couldn't compete with the Uchiha clan. I will exact my vengeance. The elemental countries will be brought to their knees by me. Everyone will submit to me. Everyone will bow down to my wife. All will submit to my child. Sauron said this as his hatred for Konaha grew even stronger. Before setting out to exact his revenge, the former Dark Lord realized one simple truth while gazing around the ruins of his clan's homeland. He needed to get some work done. And Naruto, Sauron had a feeling his ancestors' souls and spirits were more than willing to assist. He might no longer have Kurama. He didn't have the chakra of the Biju himself, but that was just a minor setback. He had been through worse and had nothing for centuries before returning to bring the realms of elves, men, and dwarves to their knees. He had corrupted the most powerful member of the White Council and matched him in strength before regaining full power. He had survived. His spirit went through hell. By the time Naruto, Sauron finished with the elemental countries, his own burning eye would be the only symbol worth a damn among all others. When you hear about Konaha, the elderly will tell you how great of a shinobi village it is, and how the ninja there are kind, respectful, and the strongest of the 5 major villages. How honorable the ninja were. They fought hard for the client. How they would risk their lives to protect you, regardless of the mission or the size of the enemy. What a difference a generation makes. Konaha used to have the sun shining down on all of the Hokage's faces on the mountain monument. Nothing seemed to be able to bring the village down. It had survived 3 shinobi wars, several enemy invasions, a rogue Sannin, the Akatsuki leader, and the Biju's strongest. And not necessarily in that order. With all of these accomplishments, you'd think the village would be humble, yet strong, and ensure all was well with the world. You'd be mistaken. The sun was no longer shining down on Konaha. Quite the contrary. Since the day Uzumaki Naruto was executed 5 years ago, the sky has never let in a single ray of sunlight into the village. For the past 5 years, the village had only seen clouds, rain, thunder, and lightning. Nobody could explain it to me. They couldn't, could they? The sky simply refused to shine any light on Konaha. And, naturally, the people of Konaha did what they did when things looked bleak. Naturally, they blamed Naruto. Despite the fact that he was dead. When word of Naruto's death spread, a lot of things changed for Konaha, and none of them were for the better. The elemental countries, like the heavens above, turned against Konaha and hurt the village in their own way. Hard. Alliances had been shattered. The number of customers had dwindled to a trickle. The trade agreements that had brought Konaha so many clients, income, and overall trade had expired. The price had risen. Revenue decreased. The only real advantage of Konaha was that Tsunade eventually awoke from her coma, but it took months after pain attacked, and during that time Danzo had gained enough support to become the official Rokudame Hokage. Unlike Tsunade and Hiruzen, who had the councils working against them most of the time, they went along with whatever Danzo said. Regardless of how they felt about his decisions, the councils were now essentially all of his yes people. Danzo would never allow them to have any personal feelings. As far as the Warhawk was concerned, he was the only one who should have feelings, and even then, only at the most fundamental level. With Danzo as the Rokudame Hokage, he ensured that the academy conditioned future ninja in the same way that he did his root. In his mind, you stifled all emotions and feelings about others at a young age, and the only feeling they should have was loyalty to the Hokage. Or rather, whether Danzo was Hokage or not, he was loyal to him and him alone. Hokage-sama, the village's revenue has plummeted even further. We can no longer sustain such a significant financial loss. 5 years of such low earnings from clients, trade routes, and even our own daimyo had nearly bankrupted us. We need to find another source of income in order to increase our chances of making Konaha the strongest village again, said a member of the council in charge of finances. As the master of coin, I'd think you'd be able to handle this, Yamada-san, Homura remarked as he noticed the proclaimed master of coin flinch. It has not been easy to find a way to eliminate all of the unnecessary items within Konaha in order to return to the budget. To be honest, the village has only been strong in the past because of the various institutions we are now funding, and ironically, this funding has been slowly killing us financially. We can't close such institutions because they're necessary, no matter how much we want to close one just to transfer liquidated funds to another location. The only option available to us here is to find a way to generate additional revenue outside of the village. As he saw many of the people in the room grimace, Yamada knew the master of coin was correct. Difficult to do given that our trading partners have been reduced to non-existence, Aburame Shibi observed stoically. Then we need to get more, Yamada replied as if it were that simple. We're out of options. Legally, no. Nobody wants to do business with us or assign missions to our village. Even our current clients, who continue to hire us for missions, are only doing so because of our past performance. Those who live further away from Konaha only hire us out of obligation or because we leave subtle threats on their person if they go elsewhere, Hiyashi remarked, because he knew the clients who now came to Konaha were desperate, threatened by Konaha, to do business with Konaha, and had a history with the village. We must demonstrate the village's strength. Something that will draw people to us for missions. Any suggestions? Tsunade inquired, sitting in the clan head seat reserved for the Senju, even if she was the last. I propose that we attack someone. Another shinobi settlement. One who is neither too weak nor too strong, with some nodding in agreement, offered a civilian council member. And who do you think we should target? Iwa? Kiri? Kumo? Suna? Shikaku was perplexed, knowing that these shinobi villages had lost their Jinchuriki to the Akatsuki years ago. Despite the loss of pain in the majority of its members, the Akatsuki survived. If anything, Jiraiya's spy network determined that only one of the original members remained. However, this mysterious person's face was obscured by an orange swirling mask with one eye hole, and he or she remained in the shadows, making it impossible to identify him or her. Not only that, but Uchiha Itachi was allegedly murdered, and his assassin, who also happened to be Uchiha Sasuke, took his place. Something that had caused many people in Konoha to cry in sadness at the Uchiha they had loved joining such an organization. Many people were perplexed as to why the boy they admired would go so far. Despite the fact that the Uzumaki had died, some blamed Naruto. Given the Kyuubi's ties to the Uchiha clan, some speculated that Sasuke wished to reclaim the fox and use the Biju to demonstrate his superiority over the world. Not likely, as the Akatsuki would discover in another 4 years when the fox did not reform as they had hoped. To make matters worse, the rogue Uchiha's followers had also joined the organization's cause and were determined to crush their opponents. Konoha, to be specific. Danzo suspected that Itachi had told Sasuke the truth about the reason for the Uchiha massacre. If that were the case, he was disappointed that the elder of the two brothers chose to be so emotional. Danzo had always considered Itachi to be a model ninja both before and after the Uchiha was labeled a missing nin. He kept his emotions in check, did his duty, and chose the village over his clan as a loyal patriot of Konaha. Only to reveal one of Konaha's darker secrets to his younger brother because the two were blood brothers. Danzo was sickened by such a stain on Itachi's record. On ninja, blood ties were a crutch. Danzo was never fond of his family. Despite his parents' love and affection for him as a child, he kept his distance from them. When they died, the man didn't even cry. Standing in front of their graves for about 5 minutes, he collected his thoughts, nodded to the gravestones, and left without saying anything. I'm not sure, the civilian council member replied. Then don't suggest anything unless you have an idea that you can enforce with strong, well-crafted points, growled Danzo. Please accept my apologies, Hokage-sama, the civilian council member said. This meeting has been adjourned. We must be careful where we spend our resources until we can figure out how to increase revenue. Yamada, go over the financial records again. Look for anything unrelated to ninjas that we don't need for a short or long period of time. If it becomes too expensive, I want it to be shut down, commanded Danzo, the civilian council looking nervous. Everything that isn't ninja related? But as civilians, Hokage-sama, this weakens us. That does not appear to be fair, Yamada objected, while Danzo's one visible eye narrowed. Yamada-san, this is a ninja village. When it comes to Konaha's well-being, the ninja come first. We are the ones fighting for the village. Who is defending it? Who suffers for it? It's worth dying for. Fight in wars to get it. When it comes to deciding which side of the table gets more and which gets less, the ninja side always gets more for that reason alone. Danzo stated coldly, knowing that the muscles of the village needed to remain strong. If civilians had issues with that, they could leave after their minds were erased and the majority of their family's assets were seized. It's a small price to pay in order to leave the village alive. Hokage's office at some point later. Hokage-sama, Jiraiya said solemnly as he saw the man walk in with Homura, Koharu, and Tsunade. I assume your presence here indicates that information about the Akatsuki has been brought to your attention? Danzo inquired before settling into his chair with relish, despite the passage of time. No, it does not. My worries are about Konaha's future and the signs that something bad is on the way. Something we thought had long since passed us by, Jiraiya responded, with Danzo frowning and Homura and Koharu standing on either side of the Warhawk. Tsunade took a seat next to her fellow Sannin. And what threat did your spy network uncover? Danzo asked, looking nervously at Jiraiya. It wasn't so much my spy network as it was the Elder Toad's vision. One that revolves around the dark prophecy he foretold more than 5 years ago, Jiraiya responded, with Danzo and the others frowning even more. This nonsense will not be repeated. Jiraiya, if we told you once, we told you 1,000 times. You can't put your faith in someone's visions and foretold prophecies. Especially those who clearly smoke far too much opium in their spare time, as yours does, Homura reprimanded in a stern tone. Homura is correct. We addressed this issue years ago by eliminating the source of these prophecies. Anything the Elder Toad sees now is obviously the result of the opium and his mind fading. Jiraiya was running his hand through Koharu's hair. Unless Jiraiya has something else to tell us, Tsunade offered, while Jiraiya nodded. There's more, Jiraiya said as Danzo narrowed his eyes. Well? What exactly is it? Danzo inquired, wondering if they could use this to help Konaha in some way. My spies informed me that the places and businesses outside of Konaha that continue to work with us in providing clients and funding are cutting all ties, Jiraiya replied as Danzo felt his face crease. Ridiculous. They'd never do it. If such people decide to take this course, we have agents ready to remove them. Not to mention that all of these companies have been working for us since the Shodan Hokage's reign. While the others nodded, Koharu exclaimed. That's exactly what I thought. So I did some research. The Elder Toad has had the same vision for the past 4 months. For nights on end, the same dark prophecy repeated itself. Throughout those 4 months, a rumor of a shadowy force spread throughout the elemental countries. One of them is whispering secrets about the village's previous dealings. Dark secrets that few should be aware of. In fact, the only people alive who should be aware of these dark secrets are gathered in this room, replied Jiraiya, while the others exchanged glances to see if they had been the ones to reveal such secrets. Are you suggesting that one of us is a traitor? Homura inquired, while Jiraiya simply shrugged. I'm not sure what to believe about our little group here having a traitor in its midst, because I doubt anyone here would be that stupid. What I do know is that the people who were informed of these whispers have decided to discontinue doing business with us by the end of the week. And it's not just them. Any and all countries with which we are officially considered neutral in terms of relations, who have been our secret allies and a line of defense during previous shinobi wars, will no longer be that for us. What worries me is the one link they all have. Jiraiya responded with the news so far, making Danzo, Koharu, Homura, and Tsunade appear disturbed by this information so far. And what's the connection? Danzo asked, as Jiraiya sighed heavily. These locations were and appear to be loyal to the Uzumaki clan. The clan that we as a whole abandoned during the Second Shinobi War, shortly after Sensei became Hokage, Jiraiya replied, while Danzo frowned at the memory. Jiraiya, it was a decision that we all agreed on. What was the point of trying to help them during the war? The Kyuubi was served to us. We had a number of well-known seal masters. We didn't require them any longer. When an alliance no longer has value, it is terminated. The fact that it occurred during a time of war is irrelevant and should not be considered by anyone as a factor, Danzo stated coldly because he saw all alliances with other people, countries, and shinobi villages such as Jinchuriki. It's a means to an end. Such alliances were tools to be used and then discarded once the value had run its course. Konaha was threatened by the Uzumaki clan. Danzo had always felt this way after witnessing Uzumaki Mito defeat her husband in a sparring match. All hail the Shodan Hokage. In a spar, was an Uzumaki's wife beaten? Even Tobirama-sensei admitted openly that, while his brother was the strongest senju to ever live, Mito was even stronger and more powerful than her husband. She even didn't use the Kyuubi's power. She sealed the Biju within herself to keep it safe from the Uchiha clan and anyone else who wanted to use it in battle. Danzo saw the woman and her clan as not only a threat to Konaha, but also as an insult to the purpose of having a Jinchuriki by not using the Biju during a time of war. Whatever the reason for sealing a Biju into a person, they were meant for war. Once a person had been transformed into a Jinchuriki, they were to be trained and used in battle. Period. Even so, I attempted to persuade my contacts to reconsider. But they seemed to dismiss it. As if Konaha no longer had the means or muscle to persuade them, Danzo frowned as he heard Jiraiya's response. Despite the village's economic problems, Konaha still had enough clout to make certain businesses and clients outside of the village work for them. Danzo would have to remind these knuckleheads what it meant to cross him. What does this mean to you? Koharu inquired, knowing Jiraiya was better than most at reading people and situations. It means that our former village contributors have a new friend. One who is not Konaha's friend. One who has persuaded them that he or she possesses the muscle to protect them from any retaliation we may exact in return for their betrayal of us, Jiraiya concluded with Homura and Koharu nodding. That means we'll have to demonstrate that our strength far outweighs that of our adversaries. Jiraiya, find out who they are. We will attack our new adversary first, followed by our now former clients and business dealings outside the village. Once they are removed, our own agents will take over and provide us with additional financial support. Danzo obeyed, and Jiraiya nodded. We're already working on it. It shouldn't take long. My guess is that it was a rogue Uzumaki who was wandering around with a grudge against us and wanted to call in some old favors. I'll let you take it from there once I have a name and a location, Jiraiya replied before leaving. You should have waited until I was out of my coma before authorizing Uzumaki Naruto's execution, Tsunade finally told the Hokage. He was misbehaving. Uncontrollable. And when it came time to do his duty to Konaha, he sent his wife and child away so they couldn't be of service to the village as their life's purpose demanded. Tsunade scowled in response to Danzo. Many people outside of Konaha regard the boy as a hero. We could have handled things differently if you had waited and simply kept him locked up. How many alliances and trade agreements have we gained as a result of him? How many people did we lose when you put him to death? Or perhaps I should say, fire? Tsunade was curious because she didn't disagree with Danzo doing what he did. Just the timing. Do not question the Hokage like this, Tsunade, exclaimed Koharu as the old bat scowled at him. So why not? He did it a lot when I was the Gondame Hokage. So did the two of you standing next to him. So don't chastise me for speaking out of turn, when you three did it frequently when I and Sensei were Hokage. If you can dish it out, you can take it, and if you can't, you should retire. Tsunade stated this while staring the old woman dead in the eyes. You arrogant child. Even after all this time, you still act superior to me. She clearly takes after her grandmother. My age and experience qualified me to do so when you were Hokage, Koharu thought back to Tsunade. Aside from Tsunade questioning my actions, we need to discuss the issue of the medic program you wanted to put in place, Danzo said, with Tsunade looking at him. What do you think about it? Such medics will reduce fatalities as well as the cost of training new ninja from the academy, Tsunade agreed with Danzo. Agreed. However, in these difficult times, funding for such critical programs will only impede us. We must choose between being strong offensively with highly trained ninja and defensively with medics. I prefer Konaha to be the pointy tip of a sword rather than a shield. Tsunade scowled as Danzo shut down her program yet again, and not even during a time of actual war. She should have started it when Konaha was showing a lot of strength and prosperity. I see. If that's all, I'm going to leave to take care of some things on my own, Tsunade replied before getting up and leaving. Tsunade. That woman. She despises her elders and the knowledge we have, Koharu spoke up, while Homura nodded and Danzo only blinked. Koharu, let her go. Her rage is not entirely unfounded. I can see the value in her medical program. While ninjas are tools, the ones we repair to make them last longer can be used for future missions in the field. I would have gladly started the program myself if Konaha's financial situation hadn't prevented me from doing so. Hiruzen should have done it during Konaha's known period of peace, which lasted well over a decade, Danzo replied, ignoring the fact that he and others had been opposing Hiruzen on several occasions and hindering the man before his death at the hands of Orochimaru. Regardless, Danzo, we are her elders. Tsunade must always show us respect. I refuse to be treated as an equal by that woman. In this village, I refuse to regard her as my equal, Koharu remarked angrily, having never liked the younger woman because Tsunade had accomplished so much as a ninja. It completely eclipsed Kaharu's career, and the elderly woman was envious of that little-known fact. Kaharu, let it go. Tsunade regards you as a ninja. She simply does not agree with your viewpoint and attempts to bring the woman down when she expresses one, Danzo replied, Kaharu scowling slightly. She's still a brat in my eyes, Kaharu reflected bitterly. 2 months later, Naruto Sauron was walking through the ruins of his clan's former home. To conceal the contents of the ruins, he used his gradually increasing strength to cast a genjutsu, which he combined with a spell of concealment. His clan's vast knowledge was buried beneath the ground, safely hidden to protect the secrets from outside forces and invaders seeking to claim it as their own. Even if the Uzumaki clan's enemies did find the vast wealth of knowledge, it was protected by a vast array of seals, making it impossible for them to obtain it. Fortunately, the seals themselves couldn't stop him because his formless spirit possessed no real form. As a result, he had spent many days reading and researching the extensive material on all subjects that the Uzumaki clan possessed. What Naruto was really looking for was something related to resurrecting the dead or, at the very least, providing him with a damn body to use as a physical form. Unfortunately, while the Uzumaki clan's work was extensive, they had nothing on the subject of the afterlife that he could really use. All of that knowledge was apparently sent to Konaha with Uzumaki Mito, as a passing reference to an ancient shrine associated with the Shinigami was made. Not only that, but the second Hokage made another reference to a jutsu during his lifetime. According to the former Dark Lord, the Sannin Orochimaru used that jutsu to resurrect the first 2 Hokages to fight the third Edo Tensei. But could he take the risk of going to Konoha? He was nothing more than a shapeless shadow. Even a Hyuga, according to the former Dark Lord of Middle-earth, couldn't see him with their eyes. But could he take the risk? Naruto, Sauron had only been like this for 6 painful months. Whispering into the ears of those he knew could turn against Konoha for the lies and treachery that brought the world into being. He was after everyone and everything in the elemental countries. Nin is missing. Bandits and samurai, even thieves from the slums of any civilization, were drawn to his cause. Anyone he sensed would be manipulated to his advantage. Their goal was to make the lives of those in Konoha as miserable as possible. While growing up in Konoha, the former Dark Lord of Middle-earth made it his business to know quite a few dirty secrets. The original plan had been to use it on councils, clan heads, and even the current Hokage if they ever tried to deny him what he desired. Years later, he learned many more secrets from the Sandaime Hokage's secret journal, which he had kept since the old man's original appointment as the Sandaime Hokage and had continued to write in after the Yondaime Hokage's death. Specifically, the Uzumaki clan's abandonment during the Second Shinobi War, when aid was desperately needed. With such dirt stored in his mind, Naruto, Sauron set out in his formless body into a world he hadn't seen in a long, for him, time. Quickly spreading the word about Konoha's previous sins against the unsuspecting people who had once called them friends. Influencing the minds of those around him to plant the necessary symbols in locations where he could invoke nature chakra, as he did in Middle-earth. While his power grew slowly but steadily, the key word was slowly, and he was not prepared for a confrontation. However, the potential reward was enormous, as Naruto, Sauron believed the Edo Tensei would be critical to his success. So, did he take the risk of being discovered? Even if only for a brief moment, for something that only Konoha possessed? His strength recovery was taking longer than expected. Without the Ring of Power, his current strength barely kept him going, and the former Jinchuriki was at a loss for what to do next. But he required the jutsu. If only to combine it with his own summoning dead spirits spells and bring his kin truly back to the world of the living. He required them to be in solid form. After making his decision, the former Dark Lord of Middle-earth sped through the water to his destination. Fortunately, the symbol of his mark placed to gather nature chakra also served as a means for him to move from one location to another. It was similar to the Hiraishin no Jutsu, but for a spirit. 2 days later, nightfall, Konaha. When Naruto, form Sauron's, arrived in Konaha, he was filled with joy at seeing the village in what appeared to be despair. Naruto, Sauron had learned of Konaha's fall from grace through his own investigations since his return, and how everything from alliances to clients to trade agreements had been lost. All that remained were clients who needed to do business with Konaha. They didn't want to do business with Konaha. And he was already freeing them from Konaha's already frail grip. Or, more accurately, he would be there in a few weeks with what was planned for the village. Moving quickly through the village, his form went unnoticed by everyone who was out this late in Konaha. Some of the ninja felt a cold chill run up their spines, and some looked around for the source of the chill, but found nothing. When the presence passed by the clan home, all of the dogs in the Inuzuka clan kennels whimpered and moaned loudly. The Aburame clan bugs moved within their hives, the larvae instinctively moving to the queen for comfort and security from the unseen presence that frightened them so much. Even babies who were fast asleep stirred awake and cried for their parents to come and shield them from whatever had awakened them. Naruto, Sauron had intended to go straight to the Hokage Tower, but paused for a brief moment of curiosity and decided to check in on his old academy teacher Iruka. The man had chosen to side with Konaha over him despite the fact that it was wrong, and Naruto, Sauron could not forgive him for it. The fact that he did it openly in front of him, even spitting on the ground in front of the former Jinchuriki, was a betrayal that the spirit of shadowy mass intended to punish the man 1,000-fold in due time. Naruto, Sauron entered Iruka's house with ease, sensing the man was asleep upstairs, and moved with purpose to satisfy his curiosity. And he wasn't alone. Moving quickly, the former Dark Lord of Middle-earth entered his old teacher's bedroom and witnessed something he never expected to see. Amino Iruka was having an affair with Mitarashi Anko. The two were clearly naked, but the bedsheets concealed the majority of their nakedness. A ring with a nice shiny diamond was draped over Iruka's body on Anko's one hand. According to appearances, the two had been married for quite some time and were very happy together. Not for much longer. Moving over to the bed, he noticed Anko shivering slightly, attempting to get closer to Iruka, and Iruka doing the same. Naruto's form Sauron's let out a small raspy laugh as his formless being lowered itself until it was directly above their faces. He concentrated first on Iruka. You believe your life together is filled with happiness and joy. I'll take it from you soon, just as you took mine. This village will be destroyed and terrorized by me. I will bring misery and death to you. I will deprive you of both the life you have and the life you desire. I will refuse you anything and accept everything you have to offer. While Iruka whimpered instinctively in fear and began to sweat heavily, Naruto, Sauron stated in his raspy voice. Naruto, Sauron would have grinned if he could, and it would have been a truly evil sight to behold. He returned his gaze to Anko, sensing something else about her that made the former Jinchuriki wish he could actually smile. It is only right that I deny you happiness, Anko-san. After all, why should you have a family as a whore? Why should a woman like you care about love? You have no right to be loved by anyone. Not your parents, not Iruka, and certainly not the child you're carrying right now. A child who will grow to despise you. You make me angry. Kiillllllllllyu. While Anko squirmed in her bed, clearly not liking what she was hearing, Naruto, Sauron remarked. The shadowy horde moved in for the kill. After all, any woman like yourself who betrays those who are similar to her for mere scraps of acceptance is simply pitiful. Anko-san, your child will see you for who you truly are in this life. He'll realize you're a liar. A traitor. A liar. Above all, a mooer. I wouldn't be surprised if your own child killed you one day. It would be a sad, pitiful death for you. To be assassinated not by an enemy beyond Konaha's walls, but by your own children. The one you brought into being. The one you raised. Named. The one you cared about. Only for him to stab you through the heart and twist the blade while you die. Naruto, Sauron exclaimed right into Anko's ear before instantly vanishing just moments before Anko awoke screaming loud enough to wake Iruka from his own short nightmare. The room was so dark that neither she nor her lover noticed the shadowy formless mass hovering above them for a split second before leaving. Moving through the village to the Hokage Tower, the spirit of a Jinchuriki and, supposed, threat to Konaha entered the Hokage office. The location was exactly as he remembered it. A desk, a couch, the Hokage's chair, guest chairs, and 5 photos of previous Hokages on the wall behind the Hokage's chair. Naruto, Sauron ripped through the protective security seals surrounding the safe holding the forbidden scroll of sealing, and grabbed the large scroll before absorbing it into his being, shooting out a shadowy limb with no true shape at the wall. Every single jutsu in the forbidden scroll was revealed to him in an instant. The class level, how to use them, and why some of them were prohibited in the first place. And, of course, knowledge of the shadow clone jutsu and the large chakra requirements required to create one, let alone an army. In addition, when the clones die, their memories are transmitted to the original. There was even a small notation at the bottom stating that this jutsu was the primary jutsu used by Uzumaki clan members due to their high chakra reserves, making the normal clone jutsu impossible for them to use. It was also stated that any Uzumaki taking Konaha's ninja exams should be familiar with this jutsu because it was the clone jutsu for them. If Naruto, Sauron could frown, he would have done so when that tidbit of information entered his mind and filled him with rage. They were aware. They knew he needed that jutsu and took it away from him. They all preached the importance of control over his chakra. This is under chakra control. And chakra has control over that. Bah. Everyone is an idiot. What good was all that control when you had more chakra flowing through your system than all of the previous Hokages combined? The fact that this was a jutsu meant to help the Uzumaki clan when Tobirama became the second Hokage and noticed the Uzumaki clan members in Konaha couldn't do the clone jutsu added to the angst. As a result, Tobirama created the shadow clone jutsu so that the Uzumaki clan could use their vast chakra reserves. Konaha, you have a lot to answer for. So much to account for. Not just Danzo and his lackeys, but also the Sandaime Hokage. Do not think for a second that the Shinigami's belly will keep you safe from my wrath, old man. I'll exact my pound of flesh on you. One way or another, Naruto, Sauron grumbled before deciding to send a message to Danzo and Konaha. It was risky, but he never shied away from danger. As Sauron, he took the risk of concentrating the majority of his power within the Ring of Power. At Dal Gundar, he risked revealing himself to the White Council when he wasn't even in full power. He was both Uzumaki Naruto and Sauron the Great rolled into one. Naruto, Sauron summoned his power and unleashed it in a repulsive shockwave that destroyed the entire office and set off numerous alarms throughout the tower. No doubt, the area would soon be swarming with Konaha shinobi, who would interpret this as an attack by an unknown enemy. But Naruto, Sauron hadn't finished yet. It had sapped some of his strength, but the spiritual mass of shadow was not finished with this place. His message to Konaha included more than just destroying the office. He desired to instill a new level of fear in the hearts of his adversaries. Inform them that the threat they dismissed was not gone. Not yet. He began carving his message onto the wall with the least amount of damage, picking up a broken leg from a chair. Konaha the following morning. Since the explosion last night, the village had been put on lockdown. Ninja Junin and above were sweeping through the forest surrounding Konaha. We're looking for whoever was behind the Hokage Tower attack. Chunin were put in defensive positions, guarding key locations such as the academy, armory, village gates on all four corners, and any other locations their Hokage assigned them to guard. The Hokage was currently standing in the middle of what had been ground zero in the aftermath of last night's explosion. Anbu were also present in the room to protect him and investigate who was responsible for the insult. This room housed the best of the Hyuga, Aburame, and Inuzuka clans. They were searching, smelling, and sensing for anything and everything that could lead them to the perpetrator. So far, however, they have discovered nothing. Nothing. Walking over to his desk, Danzo decided to look at this from a different perspective, focusing on what was missing rather than what had been destroyed. He tightened his iron grip on his trusty cane as he focused on the wall where the forbidden scroll of sealing was once found. The man's bandaged face flushed slightly at the thought of Konaha's most prized possession being taken from him and Konaha at this time. There are so many secrets. Since the Shodan Hokage's time, there have been so many jutsus, each more valuable than the last. Lost. Stolen. But, who? Who could have done something like this? Hokage-sama. I discovered something. Exclaimed a Hyuga while standing near the upturned desk where the Hokage usually sat. What is it? Danzo demanded, turning around to see the Hyuga set the desk upright. A message has been written here. Possibly from the assailant, Danzo just moved to where the message was written and stopped quickly when his visible eye saw it for himself, said the Hyuga. No. It couldn't be him. Danzo thought as he gripped his cane even tighter. The message was crudely carved into the desk, but Danzo could make it out, and it did not sit well with him. Danzo has been returned to me. I promised you I would keep my word. You thought death could contain me, but you were mistaken. Now we'll see who is truly terrified of darkness and death. A large symbol appeared beneath the message. It was carved into the wood and made to look reddish-orange despite the fact that the internal wood of the desk was not that color. It was a crude representation of an eye. Hokage-sama, what does it all mean? What is the message? What about the eye drawing? Do you recognize it? Inquired the Hyuga Anbu, while Danzo remained silent. You are not to tell anyone about this. Understood? Danzo stated firmly. But Hokage-sama. The Hyuga replied, but was silenced by the older man's glare. This message is not to be shared with anyone. Dismantle the desk. You've all been sworn to silence. I will have you and your family executed for treason if you speak of what is written here. Danzo said as he exited the room quickly. It couldn't possibly be him. It just couldn't happen. His body was on fire. His spirit was exiled to hell. He was certain of it. There was no way that Brat was still alive and out for vengeance. Despite this, Jiraiya had warned them about a dark prophecy years before. And then, just yesterday, it was revealed that the Elder Toad had been suffering from it for several months. Months. He reasoned that once the source of the prophecy was destroyed, there was no need to be concerned about the prophecy itself. So how come Uzumaki Naruto was still alive to carry it out? Shimura Danzo felt a very cold, human-based chill crawl up his elderly spine at that moment. His right arm, which was holding his cane, shook. sweat began to trickle down his brow. His Sharingan eyes twitched nervously as well. The man felt compelled to draw a kunai and lash out wildly at the unseen apparition he was certain was floating around the Hokage Tower. "You're not going to beat me, boy. I have a lot more experience dealing with other people. I am the true master of the shadows," Danzo thought angrily, trying to stomp down the fear in his mind. Fear represented a flaw. He had no weakness. Uzu Weekly Update. Naruto, Sauron floated through the center of the village square, which had been in ruins since the Second Shinobi War and had only been partially repaired thanks to his manipulations. There was still some progress to be made, but such efforts in willing the repairs with his power were taxing on his strength. Each day, he could only absorb so much of the world's nature chakra into his formless presence. Hell, it took him 4 centuries alone in Dal Gundar without interference to regain a good portion of his strength, and that time was spent absorbing the magical energies that Middle-earth possessed. "We owe you everything for rescuing my lord. Thank you very much." An Uzumaki ninja appeared in front of the shadowy mass and bowed. Ah yes. One of the Uzumaki clan members he had brought back using the Edo Tensei and the sorcery skills he had used to summon his ring wraiths back in Middle-earth. Another trying period in his life. It had been exhausting to bring one back from the dead. However, a small group of them nearly destroyed him. He needed to get better as soon as possible. Only by doing so could Naruto, Sauron resurrect and exact his revenge. We are gradually increasing in size, gaining strength. But there is still a lot to be done. We need to amass more power, Naruto, Sauron replied in a raspy voice, while Uzu Nin nodded. Yes. As per your request, we have already begun repairing the forges. It should be ready for you in a few days, my lord, while not being told the name of their new master, the Uzu Nin replied. The only difference is that the formless mass was once an Uzumaki like them. They, too, have been betrayed. Good. The metal and fire from Uzu Mountain will be required. There's also the Uzumaki Shrine in Konaha to consider. Naruto, Sauron nodded, and Uzu Nin nodded back. The one encircling the Shinigami. I'm aware of it, Uzu Nin responded. I want a special team sent to the shrine once we have enough of our family back. I require the power it possesses. Konaha is unworthy of such power in their village, said Naruto, Sauron, as Uzu Nin nodded. Yes, my lord, the Uzu Nin replied. Have you put the markers where I asked? Asked Naruto, Sauron, to which Uzu Nin nodded. Yes, lord. At the moment, the markers have been placed in key areas around Uzu, Nami, and several other minor countries to avoid detection from the larger countries where the 5 major shinobi villages are located, Uzu Nin replied, sensing his master's approval. Good. Did you recover Momochi Zabuza's sword and Haku's mask in Nami as per my orders? With the Uzu Nin shaking his head, Naruto, Sauron inquired. We attempted to test my master. But the sword was already in the hands of someone. And the mask you alluded to was destroyed. It was in several pieces. There will be more than you predicted. It was as if someone had smashed or crushed it to make some sort of statement, with his master's mood turning sour, said Uzu Nin. Did you bring the pieces? Asked Naruto, Sauron, who nodded and took out a storage scroll, revealing the shattered mask. It took some effort, but we were able to successfully gather all the broken pieces from the graves, said the Uzu Nin as he watched the tendril of shadow wrap the mask in its black form before absorbing it. It wasn't long before the mask reappeared in the center of the mass of shadowy darkness, forming what would be Naruto's face. Soren's. Determine who has the sword. Determine who broke the mask. I want to call out the fools who would take what they do not value. commanded Naruto, Sauron to Uzunin, who bowed even more. "Yes, Lord. I will do so right away." Before leaving, Uzunin replied. The shadowy mass soon turned its head toward the orb, which was placed on a pedestal with seals designed to hold it. This one, like the orbs of the cages and the all-seeing stones of Middle-earth, could spy on anyone at any time and in any place. It took some effort, but Naruto, Sauron was able to use the orb to locate the two people in this world who meant more to him than all of the elemental countries and even the Ring of Power. Hinata, his wife, and their child. A son he didn't even know the name of but was curious about. From his vantage point in the orb, they appeared to be in good spirits. His father's hair color and spiky hairstyle were passed down to the child. Not to mention the father's upbeat outlook on life. His eyes were a light blue, but he was clearly in possession of the Byakugan. Hinata seemed to be demonstrating that she was definitely mother material. They adore their child. He's being raised well. Making certain that he received proper ninja training at such a young age. Their child would grow up to be a strong person. So long as no one from Konaha finds the two in Spring Country and tries to kidnap one or both of them against their will. He was not going to let it happen. Hinata was his wife's name. As heir to the throne, their son would carve through the bodies of dead enemies who wished to harm them. But he needed a damned kami body. He also required the power that it entailed. With his actual body destroyed by the fire jutsu all those years ago, using the Edo Tensei to bring the one that was once his back to the land of the living would be pointless. Once he had gathered enough chakra, he would have to manifest one through sheer willpower, magic, and chakra. Naruto, Sauron removed the images of his wife and son from the orb and replaced them with the Jiraiya of the Sannin. The man was trying to figure out what was going on in the elemental countries about Konoha's previous remaining clients abruptly leaving them. His self-proclaimed sensei and godfather. A godfather who had never visited him since his birth and only happened to run into him by chance. Just by chance. The two would never have met if Ebisu hadn't taken him to the hot springs and picked a fight with Jiraiya. And what did he learn from the pervert? Summoning. It was only summoning, and even then it was mediocre training at best. Shit. The man threw him into a ravine to gain access to Kurama's chakra with no guarantee of success. What if it hadn't happened? What would Jiraiya have done in that situation? The dark shadowy mass believes the Sannin will probably shrug it off. He went back to peeping, dismissing the loss of his new student as insignificant. He'd have to remind Jiraiya of the price of being such a jerk and betraying his family. But he couldn't do it right now. One of these days. Even sooner. New markers allowing him to absorb nature chakra were set up by his slowly growing number of agents throughout the elemental countries with each passing day. Hidden, of course, to avoid being discovered by chance, as Gandalf had done when entering the Mirkwood forest on his way to the Lonely Mountain with the dwarves. His symbol had been discovered on an elvish statue there. Its purpose had been to absorb the forest's magical properties and keep his presence from being detected by the powerful sight that all elves possessed. And with each passing day, Naruto, Sauron would use his power to return more of his kin to the land of the living. And it's not just them. Oh no. He had no intention of stopping with just his kin being brought back into the fold. This world would understand what it was like to be disciplined and ordered under his rule. Previously a Dark Lord of Middle-earth, Naruto, Sauron would now be the Emperor of the elemental countries. And under his rule, he would require not only ninja, but also samurai. There are a lot of samurai. And what better samurai to serve a dark ruler like himself than that of Dark Samurai? Hokage's office several days later. With a renewed sense of purpose, Danzo sat in his restored office. Jiraiya, Tsunade, Hiashi, Homura, and Koharu stood in front of him. Each of them had been involved in the Naruto situation for years, and as much as he hated to admit it, he needed their help to deal with Naruto. Each of them had a hand in the boy's suffering and eventual death, so it was only natural that they should share the burden of dealing with the brat's return. You're kidding, right? Is the Gaki still alive? What makes this possible? He was set on fire. I noticed it from a distance. Even the Edo Tensei couldn't bring him back if someone tried. Jiraiya was taken aback because it should not have been possible. I concur. His body was obliterated. I saw his chakra leave his body. Are you certain this isn't a plot by an enemy village or someone close to Naruto to exact revenge on us now? Hiashi inquired as Danzo narrowed his gaze on him. The message on the desk was unmistakable. Only I was present that day when he said similar words to me. And the eye symbol on the desk resembled the Kyuubi's eyes that he displayed when my men set him on fire, said Danzo, with Hiashi and the others not liking it one bit. The theft of the forbidden scroll of sealing worries me. Many of the jutsus in that scroll are forbidden for a reason, but some are specifically designed for use by the Uzumaki clan. Sensei kept them in the forbidden scroll for a reason, and he didn't want Naruto to have access to them until he was certain the Gaki's loyalty was truly secure. Jiraiya said this, and Danzo frowned because he knew as well. And it is now in his possession. This is indeed depressing news. Homura knew the brat would notice the various annotations left by Hashirama and his brother in terms of how the Uzumaki clan was supposed to use them. How do we deal with him? If word of his sudden return reaches all of his old allies and friends, it will be a war against Konaha. We cannot win this war. Danzo scowled even more as Koharu spoke. What does the Toad Elder say? Tsunade asked, shaking Jiraiya's head. He keeps telling me the same thing. That a formless shadow being will rage across the elemental countries. That he will fan the flames of war and consume everyone in his path. That he will use that fire as his eyes and burn away those who have betrayed and burned him in the past, Jiraiya responded, as the others in the room looked at each other with an uneasy expression on their faces. Naruto, then. Did you tell the Toads about your possible theory that it was him? Tsunade inquired, and Jiraiya nodded. I did inform them. They weren't happy with me because I lied to them about Naruto dying from his injuries after fighting pain. They stated unequivocally that if it is Naruto, they will not assist Konaha in a fight. I'm fortunate that they will assist me now. Danzo scowled at this news because he had always believed that a summoning animal should obey the summoner regardless of their personal feelings about the one who brings them to this world. Can't we reverse summon him because he's alive in some form? Koharu asked, shaking Jiraiya's head. That is not how it works. All summons have their summoner sign a blood contract. When Naruto was killed, his name was crossed out. Even if he miraculously returns to this world, it is impossible to undo or reverse once a summoner is dead. This was done to prevent anyone who used Edo Tensei from having the resurrected person use their summons in a fight. Jiraiya scowled even more because Danzo disliked that on a tactical level because he believed any ninja brought back with the Edo Tensei and fought for Konaha should have that ability. So, if his body is completely destroyed, how is he even back? Tsunade wondered, as Jiraiya shrugged. I honestly have no idea. The seal Minato used may have had some powerful side effects that we are unaware of, or that he was unaware of. Perhaps it has to do with the Kyuubi. With so many variables, it's difficult to say, Jiraiya responded, while the others in the room were not pleased with his response. Even if it was a genuine one. Could you defeat Naruto if you had to face him again? While I doubt the brat has grown in strength since his return, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that he has something up his sleeve, Tsunade inquired, while Jiraiya shrugged his shoulders. It should be straightforward. I doubt the brat possesses real power. Not without the help of the Kyuubi. After all, his body is no longer there, so whatever he's using now should be ineffective against someone like me, Jiraiya replied, knowing that if necessary, he could use Sage Mode to crush the brat and end the Dark Prophecy. Regardless of how it's done, make sure the brat dies for good this time, and if possible, figure out how he came back from the dead. It might be useful to us in the future, Jiraiya nodded as Danzo responded. I'll get right on it. I'll even bring Kakashi along, Jiraiya responded, with Danzo scoffing at the man's chosen teammate. Do not mention Hitaki Kakashi's name. He's caught my attention, Danzo disagreed, with Jiraiya and Tsunade frowning. He's not all bad. Sure, the man has been living alone, but Jiraiya responded, but a raised hand from Danzo stopped him. I don't care whether he lives alone or not. It's his habitual lateness and reading of your books. They've dulled his reflexes and slowed his mind. The man could have reached cage level by now, but he has instead become stagnant. Danzo was countered by Jiraiya, who made a noise indicating that he agreed with the man but did not like it. The loss of all but one student from Team 7 has taken a heavy toll on the man. Though Sasuke's departure is more important than Naruto's death, Jiraiya commented, while Danzo shook his head. I warned him about it years ago. He's now a poor excuse for a ninja. So much of his potential was squandered. Danzo exclaimed because he felt Kakashi en route would have brought out the man's true potential, but he chose to keep some sense of himself. To the end, he was a fool. Exactly like his father. Choosing friends over mission. Bah. Ninja have no friends or comrades. They are troops. They follow orders and die when they are told to. That was why Danzo had set out to make sure Sakumo realized his error before committing suicide. Not only that, but by ensuring that the entire village turned against him for his noble actions, Sakumo's son would seek to do the opposite of his father and not embarrass himself. Well, seeing Naruto again with orders to kill the brat might snap him out of this funk he's in, Jiraiya suggested before departing to recruit the man for the mission. Does Jiraiya even know where to look for the brat? Tsunade asked, as Homura and Koharu shrugged together. With the way they acted at times, you'd think they were joined at the hip. Jiraiya will use his spy network to track down any traces of Naruto. Once they've discovered the brat's secret to evading death, killing him should be a piece of cake. If he did try to cheat, Danzo replied, still perplexed as to how the boy survived being burned alive. Hopefully, Jiraiya will discover the secret and reveal it to Danzo so that he can use this power to return stronger than ever. Shimura Danzo. The Rokudame and the true survivor of death. In Danzo's opinion, it had a nice ring to it. Mount Uzu right now. A rumbling fire raged deep within the mountain. Uzumaki Hanzo, and Uzumaki Nin and Master Blacksmith, was hard at work. A ring of incredible power was to be forged for him by his lord and master Uzumaki Naruto, as he had finally revealed himself to the clan members brought back to life. And not just any ring, either. But a power ring. Forged in the fires beneath Mount Uzu's heart. Uzu had brought the strongest metal he could find to Hanzo to add to the mix. A metal that has been dipped in gold. Hanzo was perplexed as to why his master insisted on such a creation. It wasn't his place to know or to inquire. He dedicated himself to his work. Making a ring for his master in the hopes that it will bring him back a body fit for his majesty. The black mass that was their master revealed how he was once reborn as another entity and became known as Sauron to those who lived in Middle-earth. How he intended to wage war against Konaha and the elemental countries as a whole in order to bring this land to its knees, bringing order to the growing chaos around him. For that, the former Dark Lord of Middle-earth would need to use the kunai, sword, jutsus, and the Uzumaki clan's unrivaled seal mastery. It didn't take long for the rest of the clan to pledge their undying loyalty, with each new clan member rising from the grave and given new life happening almost daily now. With Uzu nearly fully operational as a result of his power, Naruto, Sauron was able to dispatch more agents to spy on the world and establish contacts to keep an eye out for his enemies. Specifically, those from Konaha. "How's the forging going?" asked Naruto, Sauron, as Hanzo continued to work on his task without looking back at the mass of formless shadow hovering behind him. "My lord, everything is going well. Soon, you'll be ready to shape to your liking," replied Hanzo, making certain that the ring was perfect down to the smallest detail, as even the smallest flaw could be used against his master in the future. Furthermore, if there was one, Hanzo would have to start over. "Good. Please notify me when you have finished the ring," commanded Naruto, Sauron before departing from Hanzo's task. The former Kyuubi Jinchuriki made his presence known at a home belonging to one particular Uzumaki while moving quickly through the village of his mother's clan. One who was sitting in Seiza position, drinking tea, and appeared to be waiting for him based on her lack of surprise at his arrival. This solemn-looking lady had bright red hair and large, pupilless eyes. She was dressed in an ornate, high-collared kimono with the Uzushiogakure symbol embroidered on the back of the obi that was tied around her waist. Her hair was pulled back into buns with hairpins and 3 clips in the front. She also wore dark red lipstick and had the strength of 100 seal tattooed on her forehead. She also wore hair decals with kanji written on them. "What is her name?" It was Mito Uzumaki. "I'd offer you tea, but you don't yet have a body to call your own." "Just the Kiri hunter Nin mask," Mito remarked as he sipped his tea. "Would you prefer a faceless shadow?" asked Naruto, Sauron, causing Mito to frown. "No, I do not. But it makes no difference to me. However, I am concerned about your plans and actions toward Konaha." "It was my husband's residence," Mito responded, with Naruto, Sauron flexing his muscles and the house creaking in response. "Is your husband home?" "Your husband's family abandoned the Uzumaki clan. Your husband's family treated me like garbage. Your husband's family erased our clan from history so that they could forget about us. Your husband's village executed me because I refused to be their weapon or surrender my wife and child to them for a similar purpose," countered Naruto, Sauron as his presence seemed to grow in number and stared through the mask at Mito. "I know. My husband, on the other hand, was not one of them. He loved me as much as I loved him. Fighting against the village he helped build with Tobirama brings back painful memories of my time with him," Mito replied as Naruto's form Soren shrank back a little, but his presence was no less potent. "The Konaha you knew and Hashirama built is no longer alive. If your husband saw it now, he'd join us in the coming war." Mito frowned even more as Naruto, Sauron countered. "You don't know that," Mito shot back, as the crowd in front of her laughed raspily. "Oh, you're serious? Was it Hashirama or Tobirama who caused ninjas to lose their emotions? Did they treat Jinchuriki as if he were a tool? Did they execute Jinchuriki for caring about their families' lives? Did they betray their cousin clan, from which one of them married a cousin clan woman?" Mito shook her head no when Naruto, Sauron asked. "You know they didn't," Mito replied as the temperature in the room dropped. "That is how I know they will support me in this matter. They are not the same as the Uchiha. They are not the conceited fools who live within Konoha's walls. They are the polar opposite of what Konoha is now." Mito looked down and pondered Naruto, words Soren's as she looked down. He'd start by negotiating. Before attacking, save the innocent lives in the village, Mito spoke up as Naruto, Sauron laughed once more. "Innocent? Konoha no longer has any innocent people. They have been reduced to mindless drones," obeying the current Hokage's every command while he sits like a king in his chair. People in Konaha can no longer distinguish between right and wrong, friend and foe, our friendly neighbor and deadly enemy. They barely tolerated my mother when she was growing up in Konaha. She was a stranger to them. If you will, an island whore. To them, if you hadn't been born and raised in Konaha with your family since the village's inception, you were second class all the way. You got away with it because the Shodem Hokage happened to be your husband, and only a few people were aware of your heritage. Don't even try to deny it. We both know it's true. Mito nodded as Naruto. Sauron stated the hostility that foreigners face in Konaha, especially if they marry or have children with someone from the village. Except for a few, the people of Konaha were unaware of her connection to the Uzumaki clan because she adopted Hashirama's clan name. Mito wondered if Hashirama or even Tobirama knew this was going to happen because they insisted on her going by Senju Mito when introducing herself to others. Maybe they did because neither seemed to have a good reason when pressed, and Mito eventually caved in after Hashirama got down on his knees and bowed before her while his brother sighed at how foolish he was when begging. Perhaps you are correct, but I am still hesitant to assist you, if only for the sake of my husband. What is it that you require from me that necessitates this visit? Mito explained that the shadowy mass in front of her had requested this meeting. You're used to sneaking into Konaha without being noticed. I need you and a group of our kin to enter Konaha and steal the masks from the Uzumaki shrine. Mito frowned as Naruto. Sauron responded. Why? Mito inquired as the Kiri Hunter Nin mask appeared in front of her face. Why? Everything from our clan must be removed from Konaha. They are not worthy of having our most sacred relics to abuse as they see fit in that village. They mock our clan every day by wearing our clan symbol on their vests while spitting on our name like it was garbage. They claim sole ownership of the sealing methods they now employ, despite the fact that everything their seal masters and experts have learned came from us. Konaha would not exist today if it were not for the hard work of the Uzumaki clan, but they do not make such facts public in any way. They abuse us in body, name, and spirit, with no regard for the clan. If you can't see that, then bringing you back to life was clearly a mistake, and I should just end you now. Mito looked down and deep in thought before bowing her head submissively toward Naruto. Sauron. I apologize, my lord. Please accept my apologies. I am. Or rather, I was conflicted because of my relationship with my husband. But you are correct. Konaha is not what it once was under the rule of my husband and brother-in-law. You've shown me from your own experience how Konaha has turned into a hollow tree on the inside. It is clear to me that the village has no place in this world because of the poisonous roots allowed to grow beneath due to the actions of the monkey, toad, snake, and slug, Mito said as Naruto. Sauron stared. He aimed his mask at her before resuming his position. Good. I might find a way to bring your husband back to life, just like I did Mito-san. But I must tread carefully because his soul and his brother are currently trapped in the Shinigami's belly, along with a certain monkey. If I try to take them now, I risk attracting the deity's attention, who will undoubtedly devour me on sight. You know what's going on behind the masks at the temple. I need your assistance in recovering and utilizing them properly. Mito's eyes widened at the thought of her husband being alive again and not just as a living puppet like the Edo Tensei made you when summoned, explained Naruto. Sauron. So far, the formless entity had combined his master of sorcery with the Edo Tensei to bring back people like her without too much of a cost. Any soul currently in the Shinigami's belly, on the other hand, belonged to the deathly deity. Mito understood Naruto, reluctant Sorins to attempt such a thing without drawing the attention of the death god. When do you want me to leave for Konaha? Mito asked, her master's formless body moving to the door. Soon. It won't be long before Konaha as a whole realizes who was responsible for stealing the forbidden scroll of sealing. They'll send Jiraiya after me, utilizing his spy network. I need to be ready if and when he discovers my location. When the time comes, so should everyone else in the clan. There are still many of our kin to bring back, and each one is difficult to bring back from the land of the dead. Before he left the house, Naruto, Sauron replied. I hope Hashirama-kun understands what's going on. So long as he can be resurrected. What about Tsunade? My granddaughter betrayed everything we stood for and taught her as a child. Why is this so? What purpose? Mito pondered as she sipped some tea. She needed to plan her mission and see for herself what Konaha had become since she arrived in the village. Mito had no doubts about her master's assessment of Konaha. Despite his formlessness, he couldn't lie about it, thanks to the sensory abilities an Uzumaki like herself possessed and honed over the years when alive. Still, being told about something was one thing, but seeing it for yourself was quite another, and Mito had always believed that seeing is believing. Nonetheless, the Uzumaki woman dreaded the seeing portion of her mission.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.